You have all heard stories of how European museums, notably those in Britain and in France and in Germany and Belgium, they are so filled with artifacts that were looted from the colonies, notably in Africa, in South America, and in Asia. And I know you have wondered, why can't those artifacts be returned back to their host countries, especially given the fact that we all say the colony ended a long time ago, that right now there needs to be reparations, those artworks need to be brought back to their own countries, their owners. Those museums, if you remove a chunk of what was acquired from the colonies, they are going to look really empty, like buildings that are out there for rental. But they acknowledge that those artworks, those artifacts were looted in colonies. They do acknowledge, even in their own legislation, but what they don't want to acknowledge is the fact that they need to be returned. Now, they've come up with excuses to say, or if you return these pieces back to Nigeria or to Mali or to Burkina Faso or to Zimbabwe or to South Africa, these artifacts are going to be destroyed because these natives, they don't value those, they're not going to value these things the way they're being valued by us now, them being in the British Museum or being at the Louvre or being in any of those European museums. But let's start to think about it a little bit because it sounds so patronizing. When they came and looted these artifacts, some of them, they were gods, some of them were deities, some of them carried a very serious cultural significance. They didn't know how long they've been in the ownership of this so-called natives, the people that they came to conquer, whose land they came to take, and to take everything that they thought they could take back to Europe, because for them it was a novelty. They would look at it, it was exotic, like, oh, how these people managed to melt copper and create this very beautiful piece of artifact. How did these people manage to carve a stone? How did these people manage to carve wood, to sculpt this wood into this beautiful thing? So they took it to their own country. It was a novelty, but to us, those things carried more meaning. They were not just pieces of wood or pieces of stone or pieces of copper or spears or things created using cowhide or animal hide. Those things carried very serious significance. The very same way Africans had coexisted with elephants and other animals for the longest time, but they didn't see the need to remove the tusks, to take the tusk and use them to decorate their own houses. They've always found a way of making things to decorate. I digress. Let me come to the point. European countries are not going to allow those pieces to come back to, let's say, Africa. Not because they cannot produce them. Technology has moved so much. This day, they can use digital printers to print it. They can print a gun. I'm sure they can print a bullet and just stuff gunpowder in there and it can become a bullet. They can print anything digitally. Artificial intelligence has moved so much that they can be able to sit down and reproduce whatever they have in the Louvre, whatever they have in the British Museum, and actually say, we have created this thing. We have created a replica, or even maybe something that's a better replica of it. But the main reason why they're not going to remove it is, they're not going to return it, is a continuation of the colonial legacy. It's not that they think Nigerians are not going to value their pieces or Ghanaians are not going to value the Kete, the thing they looted during as part of the Kete dynasty. It's because they don't want those that are living today and those that are coming tomorrow to sit down and say, really? Did my great-great-grandfather do this? Were they able to do this in the 12th, in the 13th, in the 14th century? They don't want people who grow up in the colonies to believe there was a time that they were intelligent, that they were creative, that they had a certain level of ingenuity that you couldn't find in Europe. Just come to imagine, you are sitting somewhere else, you are poor, you are hungry, and you believe you're incapable of producing anything, of producing your own food. And somebody comes to you with evidence that says, look, 11 generations back, you were so successful, you could produce everything that you needed. You know, it rings a bell, like thinking, oh man, maybe I need to really see myself through a different eye, not this eye of being a defeated person. So the purpose why those pieces are there, they are part of, we have defeated you, you have nothing. The people you need to worship are Thomas Edison, light bulb people who invented The Wright brothers who invented an aeroplane. You need to worship people who invented things that we tell you they invented. Every inventor that you need to know as a black child, it needs to be an inventor who's European and who's white, so that you can start worshiping whiteness. Even the religion that you're ascribing to was actually founded by a white person. So the idea is to create white role models on everything else. Everything. When you think about innovation, when you think about science, you need to think about white people so that you can grow up believing that Europeans, whiteness is the benchmark of excellence. Because they know the benchmark of excellence is somewhere in the museums there. In the galleries. That's where you find the benchmark of excellence. But that's what they're not going to allow you to be able to have. So we need to really fight hard to bring the pieces back to Africa. We need governments that are determined, governments that are not going to be... But you're picking the approach. That's not going to look at the IMF as the benchmark of how a country is successful. This whole notion of we judge a country's success by X, 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 and X. We need to be able to judge a country's success by how old the artifacts that they have in their own museums. Right now you've got artifacts and artworks that are Ghanaian, that the British acknowledge that Ghanaian. They are there in the British Museum, and an average Ghanaian child will never be able to see that because they're not opening their borders to people from these countries. They can't even give a special dispensation to say, if there are Ghanaian artifacts in a British museum, at least let's allow 300,000 Ghanaians to come and be able to tour these things. You go to England, you have to pay to see the pieces that belong to your great-grandparents. Now, so the next stage of the battle that we need to wage as Africans is repatriation of stolen artworks. Those artworks belong here because those artworks will remind us of how great we are. It reminds us of who we really are, instead of believing that we are people who have invented nothing. Truth, the truth that you are not going to find anywhere else is our African ancestors, our great-great-great-grandparents, they were melting copper before Europeans knew copper could be melted. They were building houses before Europeans knew houses could be built, that people can actually create their own spaces. People can live outside of caves. They were creating those things. And that is the truth that is not going to, not going to be allowed. So the reason why those pieces are there, those pieces are not going to be brought, the pieces, governments can fight. Even the UK even passed legislation that says even their parliament cannot legislate the repatriation of artifacts. Why can't they just digitally print them, the replicas, and keep in their museums and return the original? Because the original will say to you, you were here before. This artificial intelligence printing, digital printers, you didn't need them, but you made things that are far better. You made sculpted better, sculpted stones, sculpted better, you melted copper better, you made spears, you made all these other artifacts, you made tools that we're actually able to use. So the next battle is for Africans to fight for the repatriation of the artworks that are in European capitals. They need to come back home. These people held on to the cadaver of Sarki Bartman way longer than they were supposed to. Not even they were supposed to do it. Now, right now, they are still holding on. Hosing Gungunyani of Amashangan has not yet been repatriated. Back then in Portugal, they took him in 1895 and has not even been repatriated. Now, the people who refused to repatriate a spoon, a wooden spoon that was made in the 13th century by our ancestors, imagine if these people are going to return land. Just ask yourself, these people can't return a spoon, a wooden spoon, and you expect the same people to return land. They're not going to do it, but the least they can do is really to just repatriate Hosing Gungunyani. We don't need to fight like we fought with Sarki Bartman. Reminds me of a beautiful poem by Dan Ferras, I Came to Bring You Home. We don't need to fight like there's been fights of repatriating bones. Petrus Lumumba must be returned. The fact that they brought one piece, one bone, and said, no, this Petrus Lumumba, it can't be enough. European colonizers need to let go of everything they stole, because they acknowledge they stole it. They need to let go of that and bring it back to the motherland. And even people from whom they stole need to be able to say, we want back our pieces. Right? Subscribe here. You see here? Subscribe, follow this page, A South African Perspective, so that you can get new, fresh Even when you move into interviewing people in the podcast format, you can be the first one to know it.